What is the Reciprocity Project? So the story behind it is somewhat interesting, and I want to talk about this story so you get a sense of what it's all about and how it's formed in the sort of meandering, mucking around nature of the project itself. When I was driving back from Disney with my kids, I had two small kids at the time. I had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. My wife was just at a conference and I had to drive back by myself. And it was a 4-hour drive back from Disney to where I was living in Tallahassee, or where I'm living in Tallahassee. And on the way back, my mind was wandering, and I thought, wouldn't it be really cool if somebody had created a platform that allowed us to do writing, allowed us to do research in a much more effective and easier way? And wouldn't it be cool if we had a platform where if people were incentivized to be nice and encouraging to other people, that they would want to participate? And so the goal was thinking about, how do you create a platform where people are incentivized to help other people out for the sake of helping them out? And what I was thinking about at the time was about the sharing economy and the sort of evolving nature of the sharing economy. This is when, back in 2005, when the sharing economy was just becoming a thing. Airbnb, Uber were actually becoming a thing and coming online. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice, wouldn't it be ideal to have something like that so that people can help out with research, right? And so there's lots of people around the world that want to participate and help out with the research game, or with writing in general. I think about the number of times that my mom helped me out when I was writing during my master's, for example. She would help out and give me feedback and say, hey, why don't you think about this? Now, the logical problem that you have with that, and there's lots of different problems when you have with this, is how do you incentivize and create a system where people do want to help each other out? How do you deal with issues of intellectual property? How do you deal with people not wanting to disclose their ideas? How do you get people to want to participate and just for the sake of participating? How do you deal with heterogeneous skills and abilities across the platform? Not everybody is going to provide good feedback. Not everybody is going to be ideal. And so the project sort of started in a very technical way. And I remember driving back after this Disney trip and being so excited. At night, I actually got up at 2 a.m. and I wrote for 3 or 4 hours. I sort of wrote up basically a patent intellectual property agreement with the university that I was working for. And that began the journey in sort of created the Reciprocity Project in how it stands. But what you'll notice is that it will be a very meandering story and a very much a mucking around story depending on what actually happens. So ultimately, the sort of guiding principle that I have is how can I actually give back the most amount, or how do I actually give back such that, let me take a step back. How do I ensure that I give back as much as I possibly can out of my time that I actually I'm alive? And, as a entrepreneurship, at the time I was teaching entrepreneurship, particularly social entrepreneurship, and I was really thinking about this as an important thing, right? What is the guiding principles behind something like that? And I thought, why can't I build a platform such that I can give back in a much more robust way than how you actually just give back as a standard researcher? Now, I have to go back to my experiences as a graduate student. So I went to the University of Western Ontario, and I had the process was very rigorous for my graduate school at the time. And I felt like I was never quite good enough in the process. I felt that my writing was always inferior. I felt that I wasn't getting anywhere. And I realized that that is very much a universal experience with researchers and graduate students around the world. It is a very difficult process where you refine and try to come up with better and better solutions with the things that you're working on. And it's a long, difficult process. And at the time, one of my advisors had recommended that I do a writing course. And I couldn't do that at the time, or I felt like I couldn't do it at the time. And I also felt later on I would be paying for editorial help from other people, but I wouldn't know where to turn to. And often the questions would come up as, who do you actually use to help with your writing? And that's kind of a common concern. And so I thought, well, why can't I actually build a platform that actually does that and allows people to go to a central location where they can get feedback on the writing and they can actually participate in giving help on that writing as well, and encourage many people from around in all sorts of walks of life to participate in the research process. Now, as I was building this particular platform, I had to deal with a lot of different things that were not upfront and clear to me at the beginning, and I want to talk about that. So the first thing that you'll notice is that I was trying to do things properly, and I was trying to make sure that the university wanted to participate with the university and get intellectual property agreements with the university, because I knew that was really important. I was teaching innovation at the time, and that was an important topic, and I wanted to see how the whole patenting process worked out. Now, I went and talked to the technology transfer office, actually talked to my dean at the time to think about, how do I actually go about of doing this? And when I did that, the first thing, I went through the whole process, and there was a long, tedious process of applying for these intellectual property agreements, and went through it. And at the end, the university actually did not want to participate in this project. And the reason why was because the software is a difficult thing to actually patent. And I work at a university that favors patenting because that was the sort of norm, the standard that was done for a long time. They had a very lucrative a pharmaceutical that made them a substantial amount of money, and they were following the sort of standard pharmaceutical model. And so they didn't want to get involved in a long, complicated software development process. And so this led me to a position at this time where I was allowed to do this on my free time as long as the university had no resources were involved from my university in this particular process. And so what you'll notice actually when I talk about the reciprocity platform, I'm very careful about actually disclosing the institution that I work for, and I try to keep very distinct boundaries as much as I possibly can between the university that I work for and the platform itself. So you'll often never hear me mention it. And I try to keep as distinct lines in terms of when I actually do this, at the sort of timing of things, just so we're clear that I'm not doing it at the time that I'm actually supposed to be working. This set up a challenge, right? Because at this moment, the challenge was that the normal process is to go through universities and hopefully get the university to build, participate in some sort of way where they sort of collaborate. And as they collaborate, I thought I would be the one person that just sort of sit back, and I was kind of like an advisor with the process, and somebody would find the team to put this thing together. And what I realized is that nobody was going to find that team to put it together. And what I realized is the university system was not set up in that sort of way to do that. And I think that is pretty typical across all institutions around the world. It's not in their best interest to set up a risky venture that is not likely to benefit the university, right? So I realized that was an important part. So that was the first problem that I experienced with it. And so what I ended up having to do is say, hey, okay, so if that's the case, well, what if I set up this team myself and put this together? So I remember bringing a group of people together. There's a couple of undergraduate students, a couple of faculty, a couple of, there was maybe about 6 people. A couple of people, one person was a sales person in the community that I lived in Tallahassee. And I brought them together and had a dinner, a barbecue at my house. And I thought, hey, this is how we actually create this thing. And I thought I was trying to put this team together. And I started asking friends that were in the software industry. And I have many friends that are in the software industry. And started asking them if they wanted to participate and be part of this thing. And I got, so the basic response that I got, especially during this dinner, I remember it, is that it's a really nice plan. How can I participate, but I actually don't want to do anything, right, was the basic response. And everybody I talked to was the same thing. And if I think about how the research process goes, how I normally do things, what you end up getting is a lot of people, and this is maybe the first lesson that I learned, is that I get a lot of people that are very self-interested. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you have to realize that everybody is self-interested. And so what that means, if they're working like economic agents, right? Economic agents that are self-interested, they're going to try to maximize the benefit that they individually get for the least amount of work. And that is completely rational to actually do. And so people will want to participate in a very minimal role. And so I realized this wasn't going to work out. As I started interacting and trying to get people to actually do things, I realized it wasn't working in any sort of way. The software wasn't getting built. There was no involvement by the, people that were participating. I actually tried to get one of the salespeople to work with their current employer to see if that they can actually find somebody, because they were working with partners in India, find somebody that would help on their free time. And then I also tried to get a team together by a recommendation from the technology office of a software programmer that might do this on their free time. And what ended up happening in all those circumstances is nothing happened. So after 5-6 months, I started to realize nothing was getting done. And so I had to change how I was doing things. No, why wasn't anything getting done? It was because everybody is self-interested, as I mentioned before. So I had to think about, okay, how do I incentivize people to participate? Well, I have to pay them. I have to actually put them on some sort of payroll. And given that I was a newly minted professor, I was 3 years in, I didn't have a lot of money at that time. And what I realized is I had to go find developers from another country. And so I ventured onto a freelancing website called Upwork, and I found a partner, and I actually did the normal screening process that I would sort of teach in a classroom, screen to find individuals, go through and make sure that I find partners or teams that were worthwhile. So I screened them by making sure that, I put in a couple of words in the application and say that were hidden in the application, say that you actually have to write these words down. They were kind of weird words, right? Like peanut or something like that. You have to describe what they've done. And I went through and vetted many different players from around the world, and I picked a team. That was in the Ukraine. And this team that was in the Ukraine, my rationale was to find a team that looked like high quality, and that I would pay them not necessarily the lowest fees that were available, but, sort of moderate fees. And they sort of, it was looking at the sort of signaling effect of their wages. And after a few months, I convinced my wife to actually do this. And it was a difficult process because this was going to be something that cost a lot of money. I remember it was $30,000 at the time. The first amount was $5,000, and I thought that would actually build at least a basic working model of the platform. And I should have known better because it seemed like too low of amount, looking back now in terms of software development. But it's one of those things that you learn is I have grown to distrust people a lot more as I've actually done this. And so what I learned after some interactions, I had to pay for more and more in this project, and then the team actually just disappeared on me. There was a moment where they just disappeared. They didn't want to participate. The development team didn't want to participate anymore. So what ended up happening is I had a sort of broken demo project that was online. It worked okay, but it didn't work the way that it should be working, and it was very dysfunctional when I actually had it up. I remember it was in October of 2006, I believe, when I put it up. I was very excited because we put in all of this work and design work, and we put this live. And when it went live, the platform, the R3ciprocity.com platform went live, there was nothing that happened. I thought lots of people would be excited about it. I thought many people would want to participate. I thought there was going to be a lot of involvement by many different people. And this was family and friends, and I thought they would actually go onto the platform. What I realized is that nobody went onto the platform. Nobody used it. Nobody even really looked at it. And this was a very challenging time for me as I went through this. So this is when I built the platform. I put it up, and there was crickets, there was nothing, and nobody participated, and nobody cared. It was very, very difficult for me to process. And just after that time is when the developer that I had from the Ukraine, they just disappeared. I started asking them for bug fixes, and they just disappeared, and they wouldn't sort of participate. So then I had to find another development team to help out. But this was over the course of many months where I was very much struggling to figure out, how do I do this? And what do I do? So the first thing is that there was no audience. Nobody cared, right? So I did this sort of mortal danger thing where I created a product that nobody was interested in. And we talk about that a lot. So I've been there. I know exactly what it feels like, and you feel very depressed. Because I was trying to be doing something that I was being very altruistic with the reciprocity platform and building this so that I can give back as much as I possibly can. And what ended up happening was that nobody else cared about it other than me. And I remember it very, very distinctly in the feelings that I actually had throughout the process. And so I was very let down, very, almost depressed through it. And so then I was talking to a friend of mine who had done some development, and he said, well, how come you haven't done any YouTube videos? Or how come, have you thought about doing YouTube videos? And I started I thought, well, yeah, I could do that. I can put up some explainers of these YouTube videos of what this thing is. And you can watch those original YouTube videos where I was very nervous with talking in front of people. And over time, what I did is start talking about my experiences a lot more and start sharing who I was, start going in different directions. And one of the things that I noticed, I actually got duped online, so that's probably another thing I should talk about. I actually got duped online, and I was watching these YouTube videos by these characters that would say you just have to do these 5 easy steps, and you would get a whole bunch of views, and people would pay attention to it. And so I was following along. I still remember these characters. I don't want to disclose who they are, but you just have to sort of follow this process. And as you follow this process, everybody's going to pay attention to your YouTube videos, and you're going to get millions of views. And what I realized is that did not happen at all. But one of the good things that one of these people, these sort of gurus, got me to do was to upload videos on a daily basis. So the goal was to put out 90 videos. So I put out 90 videos and nothing happened at all. So then I started I was like, okay, well, maybe it's not working right now. So I put out 120 videos, and that didn't work out. And then I thought, well, maybe I have to put out 180, and that didn't work out. And so I started doing these videos on a regular basis and being not so shy about who I was. And getting used to actually being in front of a camera. So then what happened when I started sharing things on YouTube? What I ended up realizing is that over many, many different times of sharing, because I was kind of getting duped, remember, that I have to share so much. But after many, many times of sharing, I began to realize that there was certain videos that resonated. And those videos were talking more about my personal story, about what life was like in academia, what research life was like, how all of the sort of stresses and feelings that you go through were really important to understanding the world. And it's been really interesting from that particular perspective, because it has been more about actually telling your story, and a lot more authentic than I ever thought it would actually be. And people are actually interested in that. If you think about the friends, and this is sort of, I think this is lesson 2 or lesson 3. If you think about making friends, right? And you think about what it means to do anything. And I think, we have this perspective in business that we have to be cut and dry and everything is very transactional. And that, it's all about just simple exchanges. But there's actually a fair bit of anthropology research within psychology that suggests having empathy, resonating, and appeal to a broader audience, or just making friends, basically, right? If you think about a lot of this stuff, that's what I realized. A lot of this is about what is being taught in kindergarten And about making friends is about disclosing a little bit more than what you would normally feel comfortable about, and trusting other people that they would do the right thing. Now, what you have to realize, again, is, as I mentioned, that everybody is very, very self-interested. But how do you get people to get over that self-interest and focus on somebody other than themselves? Is you have to connect with them. And so you have to tell your personal stories such that you would be there in the middle of the night. I often view myself as the person that people will turn to at 2 a.m. in the morning because something is actually happening to them, and they're wondering why it's happening to them, and they're worried about what's actually happening in, broadly speaking, the research game, but that can include a lot, both in industry and, academia. And I often sort of view my life in that way at this moment, where I am disclosing and talking about what it feels like to personally live through being a professor, actually doing an entrepreneurial venture, all of these kind of things that are deeply personal to me. And it's become more of almost like a looking glass, in that you are looking through how I see the world and personally resonate with the world. And I realize that not everybody, the vast majority of the people in this world, are never ever going to connect with this. And that is the key, right? If you think about everybody being very, very self-interested, it's not about connecting with everybody, but it's connecting with the right people at the right time. And the only sort of thing that you can do, it's not about all of the gaming and all of the sort of tricky nonsense stuff that is talked about in terms of maybe it's building an audience, for example. Or, it's not about any of that kind of stuff that you see on YouTube or that we talk and research. That's not it at all, right? Like, you can't sort of hack or A/B test or do anything like that that's actually going to get you to connect with people. People are far too smart to understand that. They see through the sort of trickiness of everything eventually, right? So what you have to do is just be yourself, be honest, be sort of very much who you are, all those sort of warts. But at the same time, encouraging and helpful, because that's what people are looking for when they're turning to you, and they are trying to, they're looking for help. They're at a moment in their life where they're searching you up and they're looking for you, and you have to sort of think about, they talk about search intent, right? And this idea that you have to have search intent, right? You're looking for, you might be looking for help on how do you make dinner, right? And people are not actually looking for how do you make dinner anymore. They're looking for very specific things that are, how do you make dinner because I'm scared about impressing my in-laws, my parents, and I need something that will actually impress them. And that's really what people are thinking about. It's not necessarily the sort of informational stuff that matters. That's part of it. That's an important part. But it's the reason why behind you actually do things that's actually matters. That's the key thing to think about. And I discovered that as I was putting things out. And it's really the only way that I know to sort of resonate and to, get people to pay attention, to care, to, remember I put this thing out and there was crickets, is just to think about how do you just be nice to other people and be kind, be yourself. All of this stuff, it's all kindergarten. It has nothing to do with, the sort of stuff that is being taught in business school where you provide value and all of that kind of stuff, which is very economic thinking and very much about sort of the transaction, the exchange, the the business of things, how we think about it, the way that you can extract value from, and then we talk about that. You create value and you extract it or appropriate it. And all of that stuff is nonsense. It's absolutely nonsense. And I've become very pessimistic, actually, about the sort of research of things as I've done this, because it's so transactional in nature. And that's what we as human beings don't really do that well. And so as I've sort of went through, I started off with very transactional and then very informational kind of, YouTube videos. And then I branched out into more personal stories about who I am and what I'm about and the feelings that you go through. And those are the things that actually matter the most to most people. Now, sometimes people might want that transactional stuff and they'll find it. Sometimes but here's the thing. I want you to sort of think about this, right? So they might want this transactional stuff and then they might have this informational stuff, right? But the stuff that really appeals and builds a community and, gets people interested is none of that stuff. They turn to the informational stuff because that's what they're looking for, and they're trying to extract something out of this relationship. But people come back and they're part of a community, and they sort of want to contribute, to give, to sort of see something that's beyond themselves when they resonate, when it feels right, when it feels like you're actually not getting ripped off, or this is not a transaction in any sort of way. And that is very different in terms of how you set things up, how you go about actually doing something. And it's very, very, very distinct what that actually means in the long run. I often think about, how do you create something from nothing? How do you create an organization from nothing? You have to get people to believe in it, that it actually exists, that it's a real thing, and it matters to them. That's the only difference between an organization that exists and doesn't exist, is because they actually have some sort of meaning from it. When I say Apple, you understand what Apple is. When I say, I don't know, what is the most ruthless attorney that you can think of? You understand what that is, and you believe in it. You believe that there is a ruthless attorney that actually exists, and you want to participate in that because it actually matters somehow. But for most of us, to get us to actually believe that it exists, you have to do something where other people actually believe in it. It's a bit of an endogenous thing. And I'll talk about that a little bit in following chapters and what that actually means. How do you get people to believe in something that doesn't exist? So as I started putting out these YouTube videos and finding sort of things that resonate with people, I started branching out into other platforms. Because I became less scared of what people would say and do and think. And I think that is the more interesting thing, is thinking about, how can I myself be okay with who I am so that I can speak more freely and openly and not care as much. And I think that has been the thing that's sort of been holding me back for a long time, and holding back the R3ciprocity Project, was thinking about how I cared so much about the outside world to impress the outside world, when in fact that is the complete opposite of what you need to do, right? It's not about impression management, sort of what you would talk about in business class, but it's actually about making friends in a distant manner, in a very disconnected manner, so that people can know that they actually trust you and know that you will do the right thing in the long run. And, here's the thing. I don't even know if I'll be able to do that in the long run, but I'll have intentions and try to do the right thing. I might be put in a ethical situation where I have to choose one thing or the other. But, the only thing that you have to decide to do is you decide to show that you actually are, trustworthy. And how do you actually do that? It's just repetition over and over and over again, that you'll try to actually make the right decision. And I've been at many circumstances where I probably have made the wrong decision and I've goofed up and did something unethical. But it's the fact that you get back up and you do it again that actually matters. And that shows to other people that you're trying to actually do the right thing. So how this has evolved was this very transactional, platform where I was building this technical software that people would use and provide, as much technical value as possible. But, given the resources that I have, and I think that is the most important thing to realize, is that when you're short on resources, this is so different than, doing the Silicon Valley startup. So I think about OpenAI right now, which is a wonderful organization doing really amazing things. But they were given billions of dollars at the beginning, substantial amounts of money at the beginning, maybe not billions, but substantial amounts of money. And you can actually do the create technological value quite quickly when you're doing that, or destroy it quite quickly. But how do you do this when you have nothing and you don't know anybody? I'm at I think the way I sort of think about this, I'm at an institution that's kind of out of the limelight. It's not part of Silicon Valley. I don't have any venture capital friends. My family is not wealthy. We don't have wealthy connections. We don't have any of that kind of stuff. I have normal friends. My dad was very blue collar. He worked 43 years as an operator in a pulp and paper mill. My mom stayed at home, and none of them, neither my dad or my mom, had a high school education at the time. So my mom later went on and got a high school education, but that was very hard to get in our family. It was not acceptable. It wasn't socially acceptable. My dad struggled with that, with the fact that they were at their personality was much more of an older style in terms of how they managed and saw the world. And so what do you do, right? If you have none of the resources that people talk about, well, you just try to get out there and you try to be yourself, and you try to demonstrate that you actually are providing value and hope that it will turn into something. And you keep doing that given the constraints that you actually have. And I will talk about that in the next chapter. We'll talk about gumption, that I think is actually a super important thing, where you have no resources. You don't even have resources to put things together, but you have gumption to actually do something. So over time, this has evolved, and I would continue to create and do software development. I'm putting, more software development into the platform at the same time as I continue to reach out to an audience and connect with people. And I don't necessarily view it as, clients or an audience, but more of like, hey, just be my friend as I come along in this journey, and you can watch me make a fool out of myself. You'll either really crash and burn and turn into something really terrible, or it might actually turn into something that you might be proud of, that you actually joined as you came along on this particular journey. And if you choose to help out in whatever way that you can, then you're more than welcome to actually do that. But if you choose not to and just join along, that is fine as well. And yes, for me, as I'm dealing with this, it's incredibly frustrating to not have that. And I promise to be honest as much as I possibly can. It is frustrating that I feel like I'm the only one that is sort of pushing this forward and providing resources. You know, I've spent almost nearly $100,000 on developing the platform. I've also spent unbelievable amounts of hours, countless, probably if you were to add up the number of hours that I've contributed to the Reciprocity Project, it is just stupid. It's another job. But, you know, I've realized that everybody is sort of positioned and situated in their own world, right? We're all self-interested. We are all very deeply self-interested. My self-interest is I want to make sure that this thing actually turns into something. But, you know, eventually it would be nice to be able to get the money back so I can pay back my wife and say, see, I told you so. This was going to work out. But at this moment, it's not, right? There is nothing about this that is going to look like it's going to turn into something where it's legitimate and it's actually a thing where people will be willing to pay for it. And so I think with a lot of this, you have to view it as not necessarily as a transaction, but a way of giving back. It's almost like it's very akin. I remember making this video early on how it feels like charity, and it is, right? You have to come into it thinking that you're going to waste a great deal of effort, waste your resources, and anything that's entrepreneurial is very much a waste, and it's very much a charity. As you start going through things, you realize, man, it is to get people to care. It requires an unbelievable amount of resources, and to have something that requires that is long lasting. Now, I can cheat people and sort of get them to pay a whole bunch of money up front and all that kind of stuff, right? But that's not long lasting. That is where you feel bad about the transaction. That is the used car salesperson. Sorry for all used car salespeople, but it's the used car salesperson perspective where you're just getting money out of the transaction and people are not going to come back. But I realized that in order to build a community where people cared, where they get what you're doing, you have to just keep giving and giving and giving. And I want to tell you with it, and that's why I used to begin this, everything that I'd say, I created the Reciprocity Project because I wanted to give back as so much. I started the Reciprocity Project because I want to give back as much as the people that helped me out. Or see, I don't even get it. That's how funny this is. Okay, so I want to help out as much as the people that want to help me out. And I wanted people to sort of see that this is very much a charitable thing. And I look around and see who is doing something like this, right? There's nobody that's doing this. And the only way that I can keep myself going, and I'll talk about that in the future, is realizing that this is all just charity. And everything that I do comes at a cost, right? And I'm removing, and this is where some of the economic transaction comes in, sort of transactional view comes in. There's only so much resources that goes around. And I have to do things that are often at the cost of other things. But I'll talk about how you might get around that in a future chapter. So, the idea here is I really began to sort of say, hey, this is my journey. This is who I am. And I'm okay with that. And I have to be public about this is who I am. And I know that lots of people are not going to like me. I know that lots of people are going to talk behind my back. I know all of those kind of things. I'm deeply aware. In fact, I'm probably far more aware than what most people are because I'm very I'm very sort of a shy, introverted, self-respective, kind of person that deep down, I don't like any of the tension, but I do it because I know that other people actually want and need something like this because I was there. and I was part of the experience, and I still am. I still feel like I am just a few, I feel like I'm 19 years old. I feel like I'm, 25 years old doing a PhD and sort of wandering around and not knowing what to do, and feeling very insecure with who I am. And so that's where I'm going to leave this at this moment, is the R3ciprocity Project has become this sort of very, and this is where it's weird because it's almost autobiographical, where I'm stumbling into things and I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like very much a bumbling idiot. I feel like I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what the right answers are. I don't know if what I'm doing is right or wrong. I feel very much a bumbling idiot, and I don't know what the right path is. And I think that this is much more akin to entrepreneurship. And it's not the way that it's sort of depicted as that entrepreneurs, this is what Frank Knight talked about many years ago. And lots of people talk about sort of, that the uncertainty that you feel, the not knowing particular alternatives that you actually choose, and you don't know which one is the right one. And people talk about sort of looking at that as opportunities, right? The sort of Austrian economists would talk about viewing this as opportunities and sort of pursuing those opportunities. But for me, I don't even know what is an opportunity and what's not. I look at the world and I am kind of a bumbling idiot, and I don't know what's right. And it is unprofitable. It's not making any money. It's kind of a stupid thing, right? It's stupidity more than anything. It's complete ignorance more than anything. It is, even though I have if you were to look at my resume, and I encourage you to go look at my resume or CV right now, if you're looking at this, you would say, hey, this person has everything. And I'm not just saying that as like I'm, overconfident and everything. You would say that this person has everything that you should go for to invest in. I teach innovation. I teach entrepreneurship. I have an engineering background. I have all sorts of software development background. I have, I sort of grew up with very good morals with my family. I had the citizenship award when I was in 8th grade because I liked giving back in my tiny little school. All of those things, you'd think that this is the person that you should invest in. This is the person that probably would know the best thing to do. But I don't feel that. I do not feel what is the right thing to do. I don't know what are the right actions. I have zero confidence in any of the things that I choose. And I think that's what this means, is you do it because you just do it. There's no rhyme or reason why you actually do something entrepreneurial or that is like the R3ciprocity Project. And there's many things out there that are like that. You just do it because you think it's the right thing to do and you just pursue that thing. And there's no economic value that's there, and you're not creating like all of this nonsense that people talk about. And then anytime that I sort of view it in that way, it feels icky. And I don't want to do that economic transaction, but I just want to actually be the sort of normal human motives that we all have. I want other people to love me, and I want to love other people, and that's it. And it seems very willing. You have no idea. I was trained as an engineer, trained in economics and finance. All of that seems so icky to me. And I was trained in sociology, where it seems like everything is cut and dry and we have these structures and all that stuff. And even in psychology, look at the psychology research. They don't sort of talk about this. The only thing that's similar is maybe when you go talk to a psychiatrist or a counselor, where they're just teaching you how to get along, or a kindergarten teacher, where they're teaching you how to get along and to love yourself and to love the world and love other people. And that is such a strange thing. And it becomes, I think, at the end of this, I think about my mom, and I think about my parents. I think about my family. I think about how they pick the living crap out of me, but in a loving way. And I feel like, my family I feel like that is deeply rooted in what I do and what I'm about. And I think with the Reciprocity Project, it has become more of a testament of my family, my siblings, how I grew up, than and the people that I might have interacted with along the way that I deeply trust. And there's only a few people, I'm not going to mention them, but there's only a few people and that I can count on my hand that I deeply trust and that I know that are looking out for my best interest. And I think that's the only reason. That's the only reason why I do the Reciprocity Project and still continue to sort of persist at things. I know that's very self-centered to say all those kind of things, but that's it. That's what it comes down to. And I think anybody else that is doing anything that's entrepreneurial, the theories that we have to explain any of this is greatly inferior to what is actually going on and the feelings that you go through. It's not about property rights. It's not about, economic transactions. It's not about often behaviors. It's not about any of that. It's about just doing things because you think it's the right thing to do, that is deeply ingrained in how you viewed the world and the experiences that you had over your lifetime. And maybe for me, the reason why it's sort of motivated in such a way that it's about caring and helping other people out is because, damn it, I had good family members that were there, that cared. They didn't know what the right thing was. And I think about my family, my God, my parents probably didn't know what the right thing was to do. And neither did my siblings, but we did it together and it was a damn mess. And they're still making a damn mess. Every one of them. I do things I think about, oh my God, why are you doing that? And same with me. Why am I doing this? It's such a damn mess and it's awful. But you do it anyways because you think it's the right thing to do with the best intentions of thinking about other people and loving yourself and loving other people. And I think that's it. It seems stupid, but I think that's really where this has come to. All right, so hopefully you understand the Reciprocity Project. It was built on me feeling so terrible about myself and who I was at a time when I thought I should have had all of the answers when I was a graduate student. But I pursued it after of thinking about, I can't let other people view this. I can't have other people have these experiences that I did. There's got to be a better way out there where people feel maybe the first thing was a technical solution, because that's what I understood, the building a platform to help out other people. But then it is morphed into how can I be the most helpful? And I will likely be the person that people will turn to at 3:00 in the morning when they're wondering why the hell this is happening to me. And I will be there just to give them a little, hey, get back out there. You're doing just fine. And I think that's what a lot of people need to understand. All right, so stay tuned for subsequent chapters.